They've been around for a few years now. This is the Stradic SW series of reels. The reason that this was developed was for the Japanese domestic market, and I personally love them. I've used them for about 3 years now for all sorts of species. What they are is a lighter version of a Saragossa, and the reason for that is that the Japanese anglers, they like a lighter reel, and it makes good sense because if you're casting for hours on end, that's where the weight of a reel does come into its own. So these are an unbelievable product. This is the new SW model. What's clearly different on these, just as a visual point, is the grooves on the spool now are angled. This is the previous model. They've got the vertical grooves on the spool, so that's how you know what you're looking at. So the new addition to the range is the 4000. There is the 5, 2 6s, 2 8s, and a 10,000 in the new series of the SW Stradic. In the 6 and the 8, you've got a power gear and a high gear. Now, it just depends what you're after. Personally, for me, when we're fishing down here in Victoria, a lot of the time it's bait fishing, big sinkers, things like that. The power gear just makes it really easy for that sort of vertical winding of heavy weights. If you're up north or you're popper tossing or throwing stick baits and you want a speed retrieve, that's where the high-speed reel comes into its own. So many great features. This 4000, however, is a unique piece of gear. He is very, very different to the 5 to the 10,000 reel. So I'm just going to put him over here and we'll talk about that guy later. Now, a couple of things that make them different. As I said, lighter than the Saragossa, and Saragossa is the toughest reel going around in the price bracket. Now, the 4000 is 300 grams, going up to the 10,000, which is 650 grams. So you've got quite a different sort of range of weights through the reels. And this is important, as I said, when you're doing a lot of casting. The one-piece bail, the idea of that is, you can see there it's just smooth all the way through. So when you cast, you click the bail over, and they don't have a bail trip on these because the bail trip is probably one of the first things that wears out and breaks from repetitive casting. So you manually trip the bail, line feeds very smoothly up onto the bail roller, and being one piece, it gives you the strength here. And I don't think as anglers we give enough credit to the pressure that is put through this part of a fishing reel. Sure, you've got your drag and your gears and all those bits and pieces, but let's be honest, this is a piece of the reel that is taking a huge amount of load because that line goes 90 degrees around that roller and everything is just getting stretched and pulled depending on how much drag pressure you put on. So that is one of the great features. They've all got the nice power handles, so you get a great grip on the reel, and that alone helps with cranking power and just ease of use. So while these reels have got all their traditional good features, Hagani gearing and all those good bits and pieces, there is a bunch of new features that these reels have that make them just even better than they previously were. You've now got X-Shield and X-Protect. So what that is X-Shield coats the body in a coating that actually gives it better saltwater prevention from wear and tear and corrosion on the outside of the body. X-Protect is water-resistant seals in critical parts that are inside the reel that stop saltwater intrusion, and that happens a lot when the reel's under load because everything's being pulled and pushed, and this just makes the longevity of the reel so much better. It's got infinity drive, which supports the main drive shaft of the reel so that you don't get any movement, and this is done by bushings that are supporting that main drive. It makes it smoother, and again, when it's smoother, there's less wear and tear. The other thing is X-Ship. So what that does, it means smoother and lighter winding of the handle when it's under load. Now that's really important when you've got a high gear reel because generally speaking, high gear reels under extreme load, it's harder to turn the handle just because of the gearing. This takes away that issue. So it's easy to get that turn on the handle when it's under load on a big fish. When you combine all of these great features. So it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So if we pull the X-Ship and we pull this and we pull that and the Hagani gearing, when you combine it all together, it ends up being like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. Everything does its bit, everything just meshes together perfectly. What that gives is a lighter, stronger, smoother, better fishing reel. So these are such a good piece of gear. Key feature that I really love, and it's a visible one if you take the spool off, is the X-Tough drag. So standard drag system on the previous Stradic had all your washers in the top of the reel here. So under load, everything's pulling down like that. The new model, take that off, we have drag washers on the top, but we also have drag washers underneath. So the idea of that is that instead of all the pressure pulling down onto the spool like so, you've now got pressure pulling like this. It gives you more even drag pressure. It spreads the load and it gives you more drag life. So it's a really great feature. This has come down from the Stellas, so absolutely love it. The other feature I love, and this is just a little personal one, is just how noisy the drag is on these Stradics. Might sound like a silly little thing, but if you're trolling with this thing, when you get a bite, you definitely hear that reel go, that's for sure. So that is the 5, 6, 8,000 and 10,000 models. Let's jump over to this guy. This is the 4,000 saltwater Stradic. It's a vastly different reel to the larger models. This, I believe, is potentially one of the best little light tackle sports fishing reels on the market. So being a 4,000 size, this you could use for flathead spinning, mulloway, snapper. You could use it for casting small lures at tuna. This will do it all. So it's a compact, tiny little reel that packs a really, really big punch. Straight up, nice big power handle on it, and that alone gives you a lot of cranking power, being able to get a good grip on the spool. But it's features that have stepped down from the Stradic in this that make it so good. So we've got a compact body, and that compact body is called a G-free body. So if you sort of look at it, obviously this is small and that's big, but see how short this is through here versus the bigger model here, which needs the bigger body and the bigger gearing. This guy here, compact body, puts it closer to the rod and it makes it much more comfortable to use for that really repetitive casting that you tend to do with smaller lures. So great feature right there. You've also got long stroke spool, so what that does is gives you better line lay for when you're casting with lighter braid. So the braid just sort of goes along the spool like that rather than being super close together where it can bite in on itself and you lose casting distance. Again, you've got a one-piece bail roller, and probably one of my favourite features on the Stradic FM and the Vanford is the anti-twist fin here. So that little plastic wing that goes in there is just so good. It just cuts out, I would say, 95% of any wind knots, because as that braid gets fed onto the roller, it does it so much quicker and neater. There's no loose line potentially dropping down here, which then can cause you a wind knot. So it's got micro module gears, and what this is, it gives it perfect meshing, so it makes it absolutely beautifully smooth. It's also got micro module, and that also helps this reel to be just so smooth. Now this reel weighs 300 grams, so it's not quite as light as say a Vanford, but it can't be, because this is a tougher bodied, heavier duty reel made for catching big fish with a small reel. It's got a 6.2 to 1 gear ratio, which means it cranks the line in when it needs to. As I said, 300 grams in weight. It's still incredibly light. It is incredibly smooth, and I would say it's actually got a very stellarish sort of feel to it. And I'm absolutely busting to use this. And in fact, I am busting so much. Tomorrow, I'm jumping in the car, driving 15 hours up the north coast to go and try and catch myself a nice big snapper on a plastic with this guy. So that is the new saltwater Stradic series of reels, coming from a 4,000 to a 10,000. There is not too many fish in our country that you're not going to be able to catch on one of these reels. So make sure you go and check them out.